Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. Online Journal Day 244, Mimi and Me Part 1. There's so much I need to cover. I rewrote this a few times trying to keep it from being long, but failed every time. This is going to be very long, so keep in mind I don't actually write these as entertainment or consumption. I'm not entirely concerned with the readability or grammar. I use these to process thoughts and come back and read later when I'm not so emotionally close to the situation. So if you think this is too long, just don't read it. I am however breaking this shit into 2 parts cause it got to be long as duck. The weirdness began when I got a knock at the door during a time that no one ever visits. Around that 11 AM time, just before lunch, you know. When I opened the door I was surprised to see Mimi standing with a bag of groceries. While I was standing there shocked, she let herself in. This isn't my first time seeing Mimi since everything went down, but this is the first time I've been alone with her or we've had a real conversation. She tells me we need to talk and that she's fixing lunch. She goes right into my kitchen and gets started. Part of me is annoyed by her presumption and forwardness. Another part of me is happy that someone in this entire situation isn't different. I have been different. Amy has definitely been different. Clarissa, and the family, it's all felt different. Mimi was Mimi, which was both a little unnerving and refreshing. The first thing she said to me was that she was sorry. I told her she's said that and I've chosen to forgive her. She says she knew that, but that wasn't what she was talking about. She said that she knows me and had Amy been straight with the both of us and we just handed me a thumb drive with videos of the 2 of them being naughty as a gift, I'd have had no problem at all. This is true, these are facts I did not dispute. She then jokes that if she hadn't womaned up and got into a serious relationship we'd all probably still be ducking. This was said bluntly, with a look like she was daring me to dispute it. I'm a dude. I'm not going to pretend I'm better than any other dude. If my wife and her best friend say hey let's have sexy fun times, I'm going to throw a little party in my head. So, no I did not dispute that. Mimi says she knows how I feel. She has been where I am. She in the past had a best friend, Nina, sleep with and steal her boyfriend. I only know Nina as a passing story. One of the friends Amy and Mimi grew up with. They all had a falling out in college over this event, but I didn't know much more about it. I asked if she let Nina duck her boyfriend. If she opened that door. She got a sour look on her face and said no. I pointed out it's kind of ducked up that you're all for being the third with a friend's boyfriend/husband, but you won't let anyone touch a man you're with. She laughed and told me she never said she wasn't selfish or a little bit hypocritical. She just couldn't imagine any other woman sleeping with Buff Doug. I said other woman, like a question, and she peered at me and said yeah. I realized that I shouldn't know Buff Doug likes the dudes too, so I let that drop, though I was curious. While chopping vegetables Mimi admitted that she felt me and Amy were really the only couple she had that experience with. That she loved me and Amy. That we're like more than friends, less than lovers, but definitely like family. I point out that it would be a very incestuous family and she shrugged to that. Then she told me what she was trying to say is that she never meant to betray me like that. I told her I knew. I had seen the text messages. I know she had asked about me, about permissions, if Amy had told me, talk to me. Even before shit started to go sideways. She says, that's not the whole truth. She says she knew better. She knew something was off and that she should have done more than ask and be placated. She tells me she's sorry for not acting on her own misgivings. When things first started, they were with the best of intentions. I told her I knew, I saw the text messages on Amy's phone. That Amy started by wanting to make sexy video for me or whatnot. Mimi said yeah, but she said she felt when it shifted and didn't act on it. She knew things were changing, but she was willfully passive about it. Mimi said she should have stopped and said something when Amy expressed interest in doing the streams with her. That she knew for a fact that the videos for me were supposed to be videos for me alone, not people online. She let herself get talked into it, knowing full well I would have a problem. Mimi says she knew she should have asked about it, but Amy had been excited, convincing, and pretty gung-ho about her building up confidence in herself and her body, and she was excited for her. Mimi said she apologized cause she knew somewhere inside that it was all bullshit. Not what Amy said, but that the change in what was happening didn't immediately warrant someone talking to me. That just asking, not confronting, and being passive was as good as being fully complicit. She said she had talked to Amy about my consent several times. That in her heart she knew Amy was being untruthful, but she just ignored it. I told her I know. I read the text where she asked Amy about me and Amy lied. She apologized again saying she knew that was bullshit too. Not for sure, but she had a feeling. Because Amy didn't want it talked about openly when I was around, although a couple times in person Mimi was about to bring it up and Amy had kind of stalled her. She began talking about a time at a barbecue where she had been talking about me and Amy possibly doing something together, which is way before I caught this crap, and I remember being confused by why Mimi would want me on camera with my wife. I declined. Thinking back, she looked very confused and now I know why. She said that she let my support of her and what she did be that one little voice she listened to. Since I never judged her, thought less of her, and even supported her path when she wanted to do camming with her husband, didn't treat her any different, she allowed herself to think maybe he is okay with it. Though she says she knew that was bullshit, cause of how I am. That I would not want that. She knew, and she took every opportunity, grasping at straws to ignore it. Mimi said she was sorry cause she saw all the warning signs of deception in Amy and just ignored them too, for her own selfish reasons. This is what got my attention. I asked what she meant. She then told me that she ignored her suspicions at first because she didn't want to believe Amy would use her and the special bond the three of us had like that. Amy had always been a bit airheaded and bubbly, but was never really a dishonest or deceptive person. Never. But since she apparently liked having her friend around more and part of what she was doing, she ignored it. She said Amy is a bad liar, and she knows it. But she ignored the signs. I asked her what she meant, and she clarified. Apparently she had felt Amy had looked down on her for her camming. Amy, Sinaya, Faye, and Joan all had great jobs. Were professionals. Were legitimately doing well in life. She hadn't been able to keep up with them. They were successes and she wasn't. They are all still friends but Faye and Joan treated her differently after, and Sinaya was hardly ever around since she moved to Arlington. Amy was her oldest and best friend and she had always thought she had her respect, even when working dead-end jobs, and not being able to find work in her field. She explained some of her friends completely wrote her off when they found out about her camming. She's never been close with her ultra-conservative family, and Amy was seeming too busy or ashamed to hang out with her as much. Amy had stopped inviting her to events where people from her work or her peers were, and Mimi felt isolated. Likewise, she didn't have work friends. There aren't peers or anything like that for cam girls. Just perverted friends and maybe other girls or performers wanting to do videos with you or something. Other than Buff Doug, she had no one to talk to about it. Especially not anyone who knew the whole gambit of emotions she deal with doing the thing. She said she had no one to talk to about it. No one to share things, and she had been worried Amy had lost respect for her like the others and that was why they hadn't been seeing each other as often. When Amy approached for the original idea, as anniversary gift, she was ecstatic to help. Cause it was like, okay, I can see that. And she thought it was sexy. When things shifted, she willfully ignored the warning signs because Amy and her were spending more time together, getting close again, and she had someone to talk about her camming stuff. They would hang out more, rather than just talking on Discord. She came over while I was trying to process all that and hugged me and apologized again. Told me she loved me. Said that I was one of the great loves of her life and she's so sorry she betrayed our bond. She said she always saw me as something more than a friend, closer to a brother. That I was like the family she lost when hers went all Westboro. I reminded her that given the unique nature of our past friendship, that if we were like family, we'd be a pretty ducked up incestuous family, again. She laughed and said, she doesn't mind that. She's not ashamed of her past with me or Amy. She said she was always happy Amy met me, that Amy brought me into her life. How I encouraged her to talk to Buff Doug after their disastrous first date. How I've always been there for her as a friend and brother when her poor taste in men left her crying at home. She told me she had always hoped, since her grandfather was dead, and her father was an abusive ass, when she married Buff Doug I would consider walking her down the aisle, cause she was sure none of her uncles would do it. That shocked the hell out of me. It really did. The girl was full crying now and she went back to the kitchen. She said she was pissed at herself more than she was pissed at Amy. That she should have done better, known better, and she didn't want to see me and Amy split up. I told her none of that is on her, Amy a grown-ass mature woman, and she made her own choices and decisions. Mimi says yes and no. That Amy is grown, but far from mature. She says we both bear some of the blame for coddling her, but that Amy is still a good person. I say, I always thought that, but given current circumstances, I wasn't so sure. Mimi sighs and says that Amy is a good person and I know it and that I love her and that Amy loves me. I try to argue, but she shushes me. She says this little misadventure, as ducked up as it was, is not the issue. Not really. I ask her what she means and she drops some truth bombs on me. So she say that I'm not upset Amy fooled around with her. She said if her and Amy were legitimately sneaking around and ducking for their own enjoyment, that I'd most likely be pissed I wasn't invited. Which I can't lie, would be true. She says that the online stuff was a step too far, but doesn't see that as completely unforgivable. Not something she thinks I would have a stick up my ass about. I'm judgy, but not judgmental. And I would at least deal with it reasonably, especially if it was something my wife wanted to do. Though she said I probably would have ultimately decided against it. Then she says my problem is everything that was wrong in the relationship before this happened, and my perspective on all of it has changed and that's what needs to be dealt with. I got a little upset asking if she was saying I was the problem. And she said no, but the fact that I got all hot about that fact is part of it. She says all of Amy's spoiled, absent-minded, and oblivious little quirks were seen as forgivable when I thought she was happy. Mimi had told me many times I had to be firmer with Amy, because our girl is a bit flighty as she says it. She never had stand up and do for herself. She got me right out of college and I had a plan. She moved in with me, which apparently Mimi has thanked heavens for many times, as she found living with Amy's messiness and obliviousness super frustrating, and I started to handle everything. Mimi said it's just how I am. I make things work. And she saw Amy growing and doing better, just not good enough. Not for anyone else cause she didn't have to and I wasn't too pissed about it cause I thought I was winning. That was what I was truly upset about. That I thought I was doing well, I had a happy wife, my sex life was great, I had a good job, nice house, and all that. It all justified any of the bullshit or bumps I dealt with, because I was successful. Then all of a sudden I wasn't. I hear no matter what I did, said, or what I achieved, Amy had an unhappiness that I could do anything about. That I worked hard to make Amy happy and she wasn't. So much so, that she did things that could ruin the relationship. That her unhappiness and insecurity was stronger than all those years and all that effort. Mimi said she doesn't think I could handle that thought. That beyond anything else, that was what infuriates me. She said I don't understand Amy and that I'm most devastated by the idea that I no longer think I'm winning or successful. I think I have failed in my marriage. That somehow everything I did and sacrificed wasn't enough for Amy and that's taken the rose-colored glasses off. All the stuff that Amy needed to work on all these years that I didn't stand firm on, that were disregarded or were little annoyances, are now ultra magnified because I don't have the idea that we're winning, we're successful, and at least everyone's happy to fall back on. She says I would from time to time say something about feeling underappreciated, or disrespected from the way Amy treated the car, the house, or any of the many things that were really important to me, but that I would let that slide, to the point of even kind of being walked over because Amy seemed happy, which made me feel happy. Mimi thinks that I judge my worth and my value by what I can do and the positive outcomes I create. That if Amy is happy and good, then I am successful and I'm happy. I feel good about myself. That all my confidence is wrapped up in being successful, and that when it felt like it's not, that I've come crashing down to earth and all this other little shit that wasn't so big, and probably should have been, is now much more frustrating to deal with. There's more, but I'm just gonna post it tomorrow sometime. Hopefully, this is prohibitively long and folks who wanna chastise me for not just torching my marriage to the ground will be too bored to read it. I'm surprised it took Mimi this long to come and talk to you, but I have thought she was your biggest ally from the start. Seems like some interesting introspection from Mimi, and I would try and take her advice on board as best you can and work on a better, more relaxed version of yourself. As does Amy, of course. Very salvageable, but I guess there are some harsh truths you guys are yet to face. Mimi is very insightful, to say the least. She says this little misadventure, as ducked up as it was, is not the issue. Not really. I strongly disagree. First off, it's not a misadventure. It's not a mistake. Secondly, just because it led to you finding out that Amy has serious self-esteem issues as well as some grass is greener issues with the marriage, the fact that she lied to you over and over, became a cam girl, and at the least, entertained the idea of having sex with another guy for money is the main issue. Yes, there are serious underlying issues that her behavior exposed, but to try to say Amy not being held accountable by you and spoiled by you is the real issue is just deflecting or just wrong. I'm sure Mimi may even believe that, but that doesn't make it true. She knows you all way better than I do, but I can promise you I'm more objective than she can ever be. Lots of women have that perfect marriage like you used to have. You put her on a pedestal, gave her everything and let shit slide. You probably shouldn't, but it's your marriage, so you can do that if you want. So apparently Amy has had this huge self-esteem issue for years, and when she lost weight she went outside the marriage to seek validation and approval. Makes sense, that's an old story. When Amy started feeling better about her looks she became more unhappy with the marriage, and here is where Mimi is right. Even though you gave her everything and spoiled her, it would never be enough for Amy once she got a taste of that validation from others. It becomes a fantasy and the reality can never compete with that. That's why good marriages are work. You have to make a decision every day to love and care for your spouse. These forums are filled to the brim with stories about how sorry some wife is she cheated on her perfect husband and threw it all away just because Bob from the office paid her some attention and knew just what to say. Men do the same thing, get a side girl who they think is the one after a 3-month affair and throw away a 12-year marriage. She says that the online stuff was a step too far, but doesn't see that as completely unforgivable. Mimi doesn't see it as unforgivable but admits it's a step too far. Gee, that's big of her. Although I have to ask if perhaps since that's what Mimi does for a living, maybe she finds the cam thing as well as being naked on the internet as far less of an issue than other people do. To say that the cam, the lying, the private cams and her entertaining the idea of meeting someone for 5k isn't the main issue is what I call BS on. Just because it exposed some other problems in your marriage doesn't suddenly make all the stuff Amy did not a big deal, and not while you are really angry. I hear no matter what I did, said, or what I achieved, Amy had an unhappiness that I could do anything about. This is true, and what people like Esther Perel, a psychotherapist, emphasize. The theory is, basically, that Amy had always felt less than, and no matter how many times you told her you loved her or showed her you loved her, she could never quite fill the emptiness. She was happy, but no one can always give you 100% of what you need. That's why you have to work hard at marriage, or relationships. You have to feed and water them, and above all be honest about how you feel. Amy was never really honest with you about how she felt about herself and her self-esteem. Not since you met her. Hiding something from your spouse is unfortunately all too common. Bottom line, when Amy lost the weight and felt better about herself, having validation and admiration from strangers became like a drug. She, like many cheaters in happy marriages, was willing to risk her marriage over some cam girl stuff, sex with Mimi. Maybe going further if she hadn't been caught and lying to you the whole time. This is very common, but from everything I've read that you've written, it was the lies, the betrayal of you, her marriage and even Mimi that upset you. The fact that she had underlying issues with self-esteem was important to you, but her keeping that from you wasn't going to make you think about divorcing her. It was only when she started the cam stuff, lied to you and started getting off on other guys' attention that you got really angry. If Amy had just come to you and told you about her self-esteem and asked if she could do the cam thing, you might have said no or you might have said yes. Either way you would have listened and not separated like you did. Yet when she did all this stuff behind your back, that's when you got angry. Because that is when she betrayed you and your marriage. She says all of Amy's spoiled, absent-minded, and oblivious little quirks were seen as forgivable when I thought she was happy. Mimi is almost right, but she has it backwards. She is basically saying because you let Amy do whatever and then found out your marriage wasn't perfect, you flipped out. Except you flipped out because she lied to you and betrayed you. You will never know how far it would have gone because you caught her. She even did private stuff that Mimi may not even know all about. You didn't get so upset because your wife was a little childish, had a few issues and had some big self-esteem issues she never told you about. You got upset because she got naked on the internet for money and had sex with another girl while she lied to you the entire time. She lied to your close friend to make all this happen behind your back. Then your friend shows up to say she lied as well. She knew you wouldn't be okay with this. Oh, and this is why you are actually upset. Then all this other stuff came out and that is why she is in therapy ATM. Hopefully she can address her other issues there. Supposedly people in good marriages who cheat do so because they are looking for something. Not something that their partner can't give them, but a fantasy that never existed and their affair allows them to live out. A lot of people get off on having sex in cars or cheap hotels like teenagers, like the teenager they wish they had been but never was. Or the sneaking around gets them off. That is almost impossible to fix. It's up to Amy, you and her therapist to find out if it was just her self-esteem that led her to seek approval elsewhere and if she can truly believe you love her like you say you do/did. You definitely seem like a take-charge guy who fixes things. You also admit that you put Amy on a pedestal and you admit that she is immature at times. But the lying and the cam stuff wasn't the blasting cap, it was the dynamite. It was what blew things up between you, and when you discovered that she had been unhappy with her self-image, it didn't suddenly make you hold Amy responsible for all the stuff you overlooked before. I'm certain you wish you knew about her self-esteem years ago and gotten her help back then. Yet to suggest that's the real reason you are upset with her, instead of the horrible way she disrespected you and your marriage, is backwards. Mimi is right on one thing though. That little stuff, the childish stuff that you might have overlooked at times. It's time to call that stuff out. But I'm sure you already know that. I just hope that you can repair the damage Amy did by going outside the marriage, as well as the strain holding her more accountable for being an adult is going to put on your relationship. Otherwise she will never grow as a person, and if you stay together you might find yourself in the same position 3 years down the road. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night. Wherever you are.